Hello, this is TechMan88, and I've got here a large programmable display. A couple of people have made big displays like this, but I did a couple things that I thought made it a bit easier to use. Like I used hoppers to store character data. So this is like the video display, the video memory up here. And right now I'm just having it write out my name, and I'm using trapdoors, but you can use lamps like this, redstone lamps. And I made it just sloped like this for convenience in some of the other redstone, but you could make it straight up and down. Yeah, this isn't really the point of the video, the display. The point is how I actually retrieve the characters and put them up on the display and the methods behind all that. So the way this stores characters is in shulker boxes like this. It doesn't have like a static area to store all the characters, and this is all the character storage down there, and character retrieval as well. So this is a character, I just made it. The water bottles represent turning the pixel on, and the swords represent turning the pixel off. So if I just toss this into this decoder, there we go. It's going to push up some of these redstone blocks, and that's going to depower these redstone lines down here. And that's going to just allow it to put that pixel in. So that's the one I just made. So like if I take this and just like put a water bottle there instead, now I can toss that in. And yeah, it comes out with that character. And the nice thing about doing it this way is that the items will restack into the shulker box. So they come in shulker box up here, and they're pulled into this hopper minecart that runs over, and then the items are placed back into a shulker box down here. And I guess I'll just show that once more. So toss that in, shulker box here, dispenses the items, and they come out into the shulker box down here, and I'll try and catch that. Okay, I think it was this one. Yeah, so that's the one that I put in back in the same order. If you use stackable items for this, it's not going to pack up correctly. So as far as I know, this is maybe the only way you can do this. I have the water bottles that can get pushed into these push-in brewing stands, and then the comparators read the hopper below that. And yeah, I'll go over the rest of this in detail a bit later. But basically that's all it does, is it takes in the character and eventually just spits it out, and it can go back into the storage after that. So if I want to type a new sentence on this, I put a device back here to do that sort of thing. So this was one desire of the whole thing, to make this fairly easy to actually use. So I'm just going to type a message like, this could be arranged better, but like H, E, L, L, O. Then I've got this thing here to start printing out the sentence. This part is pretty sensitive. You want to make sure that stuff happens in the right order for this, or your storage here is going to get mismatched. But yeah, the key comes down there, and it launches out a shulker box, and that goes into this decoder that I showed just a second ago. And that should start printing out the character. And by the way, I would like to use glowstone, but in this version of Minecraft, redstone lamps, but it's very slow in this version of Minecraft, so I'm just using these trapdoors, which they kind of look all right. But yeah, now the message is starting to come out, and I'll try and chase the sequence as this happens. So when it's done with some stuff, next key comes out here. Okay, then the shulker box came out. It's going up this way into here, decoding the character. And yeah, you can see that different patterns kind of come out of here. So that was an E. And yeah, it's like pushing up these redstone blocks, which depower this hopper here. And it's also fed by another hopper line on the other side via this pushable thing here. And so basically, it triggers these one at a time. They're not in a any kind of synchronicity, but then it'll depower everything at once, so it sends the same amount of items down the hopper chain that's back here. So there we go. It's up to the letter L, and yeah, this is a little bit slow, but I figure these things are kind of laggy to begin with. I think my computer is slow, by the way, but it gets up to like 10 millisecond ticks. Let's see what's going on now. The O should be around here somewhere. There we go. There's the O. That lamp lit up. Okay. Oh yeah, and then at this point it gets pulled down into this hopper, which is the L, and it's not labeled correctly just because of other stuff in the system. But then down here, this is where the current letter is stored. So there we go. There's the message that I just typed out, and I'm actually going to switch it to glowstone just so you can redstone lamps just so you can see what it looks like. So there we go. There's all the gobbledygook that I put up there. So back here is the character storage, and you can see it's really, really big. And basically in each slice of this, it's going to store a character. So it's got a standard sorter back here, and some redstone blocks, which it can store state, like a key comes down this way, like a named piece of paper, and then it pushes down that redstone block. And then, yeah, when it's done with that character, it's going to put it back into the slot with the redstone block down, because that's going to depower this hopper, which is below where the shulkers will be coming back. And it's going to, well, it's also going to be powering the dropper when you turn it on in the first place, so that shoots out the shulker box. So yeah, then the shulker box comes up here and gets used and then sent back into this top stream right here. And I did come up with a way to make it twice as fast, because the bottleneck is how far how fast the items can move down the water streams. So this is where I double it up, so you'd have items going down the center, and got that on both layers. It was kind of a challenge, but it kind of looks cool. I'll show more of that later, though. So if you're worried about actually setting up the characters to begin with, I created a little device back here to help with that. So I have the white sand, that's going to represent on pixels, then black sand is going to be the off pixels, or sorry, concrete powder. So the way this works is it can basically pull out one sand at a time from the bottom to the top, then move over a row, etc. for the whole thing. So I'll get a new shulker box, make sure there's nothing coming into that. Press this button, and it's just a bunch of timers back here. I didn't spend any time at all making this good or compact or anything. But this is just something you would use like once to set up the characters, and it eliminates like looking into the shulker box and like trying to figure out where everything goes manually. And maybe I can show this. If you were actually just doing 3-letter characters, you can kind of set things up like this. Just because this first row here would represent the first column of the character. So like this is the shape that it would make, kind of like that. So I can show that one in a second. So yeah, I'll take this one I just made. It was like a space bracket sort of looking thing. And I can just toss this in. This is fine with the system as long as it's not running. It's just going to instantly display it. So that should come out exactly as I put it. It should be 5 wide and just like up to here, kind of like that. And while that's going on, I will grab this one that I just set up manually without the machine. And I can try that one next. So now it's just going to toss out that shulker box, and it's just not going to go into any one of these slots back here. See, yeah, it just lands back there. So this is kind of nice for like doing a trial run on a character that you just made. Make sure it looks right before you stick it into the system. So this one should look about the same, just 3 wide. And by the way, if I didn't mention that this before, this is variable width. So your characters are anywhere from 5x3 to 5x5. And that's just limited by the size of the shulker box. So yeah, there we go. That shows that it's not terribly hard to set up the pixels. It probably is the majority of the work. Like setting up the display here, this is all just really straightforward. It's mostly straight lines. The decoder, I wouldn't say it's too bad. It looks kind of like a monster, but it's not too bad. This keyboard thing is not too hard, but yeah, just setting up the storage, like the block placement itself is not hard at all. But then setting up each individual character and being very careful that you don't screw something up in the process, that's going to be the majority of work, but it's not too bad. I think it took me about maybe an hour total to do all that. And now, just with like 10 or 20 seconds of effort, I can just type in a sentence and tell it to go. And yeah, got a huge display. And I'll come way back here. It's really meant to be displayed from a distance. And yeah, just on the ground, you can see how massive it is. And you can make the pixels 3x3. That's really not hard. So then it would be 50% bigger or whatever that would be. So now I'm going to try and explain the decoder in a bit more detail, because I kind of glossed over it first, and it's kind of a complex looking thing. So I've got a character here, just this one right here, because it's fairly long. I can explain more of it. So yeah, as I've said before, the first thing it does is puts the shulker above this hopper minecart, and that's just going to load up all the items. This is at 1/5 or 1/4 speed, by the way. So yeah, the first thing it's going to do is these hoppers are going to push up these glass, and also it needs to pull out the swords so that it can put them back in the shulker later on. So now it's in that part of the step, and this all happens quite fast. But yeah, I'll show it again. First it pushes up where all the water bottles were, and then now it's sucking all the items out. Then the last thing it does is suck the items out from those bottom hoppers. So it's 3 layers of hoppers, and they're pointed kind of like this. And actually on this bottom layer of hoppers, I was hoping that if I deactivated them all at the same time, they would end up in order into the shulker box, but apparently that's not true. The hoppers can be kind of random. If you're using them like this, you want to depower them all at once. So yeah, it comes along here, does that whole part, and then when it's at the end, it triggers this this detector rail. That's going to push down this rising edge detector. And yeah, first thing it's going to do is deactivate these hoppers here, or enable them. And then it's going to run this short timer, which is configured just long enough so that the items can get into the shulker. Then when it's done with that, this falling edge detector is going to trigger the rest of the sequence. So normally that involves powering this rail. But in some cases, if this redstone block is back in this position, it's going to disable this comparator and prevent it from running anymore. So yeah, you won't see it running anymore after that, but you will see it putting in a blank space, which maybe I can catch it. Yeah, so when it advances, it just does like a little space between the characters. And yeah, that's about that. There's still more to cover, and I will do another character just to show it how it interacts with the display up top. So yeah, it pushes up these redstone blocks. And yeah, these hoppers, as I've said before, like below here, it's powered by both of these redstone lines on either side. So this is kind of like the synchronization piston. So it's, yeah, putting up the pixels one at a time from this side, but then it runs like the synchronization thing, which takes out the items from these hoppers here. And I've just got them being filled up with a command block, by the way. So yeah, that allows items to flow out of here and into this long chain of hoppers. And yeah, the chain of hoppers just starts right here. But I think the main interesting thing about the way this works is just the water bottle and unstackable item, the swords as I call them. just because that means you can use a chest to store the long sequence of items, like this one. Or you can even use a bigger chest. I think there is a way that you could store up to like the full 54 items in a double chest to store a sequence, or maybe even longer than that. But I didn't want to get into that. I wanted to keep this relatively simple. And using the hopper minecart, I think, makes it a little easier to synchronize some of these actions happening. So yeah, I'm just going to leave it at this. And it's, of course, variable width from 1 to 5 pixels and then 5 pixels high. So another thing you can do very easily on this display is make the characters wider. So all you would have to do is replace this repeater with a longer one. I think maybe just another repeater of 4 ticks would do it. So that should make the pixels 3 wide by 2 high. And I'll go faster again. So yeah, very easy to make them a little bit wider. But I did have trouble making them less wide. Let's see if I can do this without breaking something. Maybe like that. So I thought maybe you could make them 1 pixel wide. Oh, that was not enough. Okay, yeah, I'm trying to do the 1 wide pixels now. I'm not sure if I got that right. But you do eventually run into problems with this display when it's going over certain sections, where it's going over the section here, because like the dropper here is going to be depowered a little bit after this dropper, and that just means that it doesn't work out quite right. So yeah, I think you would need a different design than this if you wanted like 1 wide pixels. But I think if you're making one of these, you want to make it pretty big. That's the point. It's kind of a fun project, just to be obnoxious. So I was also talking about this alternate design, which is vertical. It looks like this in the cross section. Otherwise, it's exactly the same. But this is a little bit easier to show how this works. So you would like depower it to send the pixels down. And it looks just like that. So I can toss 3 on there for like a 3 by 3 pixel. Then just depower that and it'll send the items down. And back here, if you didn't know about this technique, this is a way to power everything to the side of a block. So this repeater is going to power this redstone block, which is going to power this block below the repeater, and obviously the rest of the blocks along here. So that is just a pretty nice thing to use in this kind of situation. And yeah, if you were to build the vertical one with this, I think it's pretty obvious what you would do. You would just like bend these green lines around, and it should work out just fine. Now I'd like to cover the character retrieval. So I've just got a letter and I'm not running anything else, and I'll show this in action. And I've got this slowed down so we can see things actually happening. So it's going to be read out by this one right here. This is just the item sorter. And that's going to push down this block. And that just happens by reading off this redstone line behind it. And yeah, it just works exactly like a normal item sorter with just a little bit of attachment behind. So yeah, that redstone block is going to disable this hopper. So this will pick up the item in the future. So once it's done, it's going to pop out the shulker box down here. And that's going to run along here and just be picked up by this this one right here. So this is where it ended up back in there. And then when it's done with that, like you could see something happen just a second ago. So like the shulkers, this isn't going to do anything bad because the system is off. But if I just toss the shulker box down here, you can see it starts this timer right here. And what this is doing is just waiting for the item to get all the way to the other end. And it's going to trigger this line down here. And this line, by the way, it's bud powered. So you see it's actually not contacting any of these pistons right here. So if I just push this redstone down, then I can just do an update right here and it'll get pushed back up. It was just kind of handy. Needed a lot less things. Just use this arrangement of redstone stuff. So one more thing about the character storage I forgot is that This is where the characters come in, and they'll be spit out by this dropper down here. You would connect this tube, you would connect it back to your keyboard here, the character storage, and that should sort in just fine. So I've cloned a little piece of this, and I wanted to show how you would set up the categories. So the first thing you would do is obviously build the thing. It would look like that, and I guess these should be up. But yeah, I just left 41 items this slot, then the rest are just one item. And this is just ready to receive an item and become a sorter for that type. So up here I've got some the keys set up. These are what I'm going to put into it. So then I've also got these shulkers that I've already programmed, and I've named them with the letter that they're going to be. So I can just clear my inventory and just pick up these. And of course this is just a backup. So I'm going to do 9 of these. There we go. There's 9. So to set up the categories, what I'm going to do is, actually I think there's only 8 on this copy of it. But yeah, just toss out these items in order. And should be a problem if I put out too many of them. Let's see. Okay, yeah, I got to H. So now I can just go back here, and I know that those are all set up in order, and then I can just put the shulkers in one at a time. There's definitely another way to do this, but I found this is not too bad, and it's pretty fast. And this being like a kind of tedious process, you want to just have it fast like this. So now when I press, say, like a D, it should give me the D. And then when I just toss it in here, it should go back into that slot, into the D slot. So yeah, nothing there now. And yeah, ended up right there. I was a little bit wrong in how I set up this sorter. I didn't make an overflow-proof one by accident. But yeah, you want to set it up more like that with a single lamps, or you might possibly run into overflow issues if you send too many things. So I did come up with a version of the character storage that's twice as fast, and I did that by doubling up the hoppers. So there's like a sorting system on the left and a sorting system on the right, and I just made the rest of it vertical, just like this. And yeah, so there's another set of doubled up hoppers to receive the shulkers back. So I'll show this working. It aligns against a chest, so it can access both sides. So I'll try and get an H out of this system, and I've set everything up in this so it'll work. So toss it in there, it travels over both sets of hoppers, and it activated the H, which is right here. And it also popped out the shulker, which this returned back to me. So yeah, you can see that's called H. And then toss it back in, and it should have landed in this dropper right here. Yep, there's the H. Now I can just reactivate everything again using this just update detector. I did most of my development and testing in 1.13, but I think it works just fine or better on 1.14 because they have the faster light engines. You can use the glowstone without much of a problem. 1.12, it should work. You will need a couple changes. Like you can't do this in 1.12. Also in 1.13 it occasionally has problems, but most of the time the item makes it over if you set up your water streams carefully. Obviously in 1.12 you can't have these water streams, which make it so much simpler. But other than that, it doesn't use a whole lot of funky redstone, and like this stuff with the hoppers, I was careful that I didn't do anything that's positional or version dependent or anything. So anyway, I think this is relatively space efficient for what it does. The display is obviously pretty easy to put together, and you can extend it longer and longer if you just want a bigger display. Yeah, the character storage, that takes a bit to set up each individual character. That is going to take a bit of work, and you got to be careful with that. This part right here, the keyboard, this is pretty easy. The decoder, it's not really that bad. Once you get it working, it should just work just fine. And overall, I think it's laid out more like a modern computer where you have the video memory up here along the display. You have like a decoder to read some data that you get. And then you have the big data store over here. I've typed out a nice pretty message here for you to look at. So thank you for watching and goodbye.